Did you know that in some survival games, if you ignore your hunger and thirst, it can lead to your character's death?
Really? That sounds intense. Which games are you talking about?
Let's dive into it. First, there's The Front, a game where maintaining your hunger and thirst isn't just about survival, but also about gaining useful buffs.
So eating isn't just to stay alive, but also to get ahead in the game?
Exactly! The late-game foods in The Front offer substantial buffs, requiring players to gather various ingredients and even set up farm plots.
That's so interesting. It reminds me of how much strategy can go into these games.
Right. And speaking of strategy, 7 Days to Die incorporates food and drink mechanics that are crucial for maintaining health and stamina.
7 Days to Die is brutal when it comes to survival, isn't it? I've heard that poor hydration can lead to death, and finding enough to drink early on is tough.
You're spot on. Plus, eating the wrong foods can give you dysentery, which adds another layer of challenge. But learning advanced cooking skills can make a big difference.
It's like a whole survival regime condensed into a game. What about Sons of the Forest?
In Sons of the Forest, hunger and thirst are constant threats. If you don't manage them, death is inevitable. Early game is particularly harsh as your inventory drops upon death.
So you really have to learn how to hunt, fish, and trap quickly.
Yeah, and later on, you can even dry food to preserve it, which is a nice touch.
That sounds pretty realistic. Now, what makes Project Zomboid's food system noteworthy?
Project Zomboid has a complex nutrition system where the food you eat affects your character's speed, endurance, and even experience gain. Different foods have varied nutritional values.
Wow. So it's not just about eating, but eating right.
Exactly. Interestingly, if your character gets fat, it impacts their in-game abilities. They even have a skill called Nutritionist to help you manage this.
That's pretty realistic. I guess the key takeaway here is that survival games are not just about battling external threats, but also managing internal ones. What's next?
The Long Dark is another tough one. Food here is crucial for long-term survival, but you can't just eat anything. You need to cook many of the ingredients, otherwise they could make you sick.
I appreciate the realism. Even in harsh conditions, you can't be too reckless with what you consume.
Absolutely. And speaking of realism, Valheim adds an interesting twist. While you won't starve to death, food in Valheim provides critical buffs for combat.
That's different. So food in Valheim is more for enhancing performance rather than just survival?
Precisely. The buffs decrease over time, so you need to eat frequently to maintain them. This makes growing food and cooking a core part of the gameplay.
Sounds like a clever integration. And finally, we have Scum. What makes Scum top this list?
Scum stands out because it simulates a detailed metabolism requiring the right balance of carbohydrates, protein, minerals, vitamins, and fats to ensure optimal health.
That's incredibly detailed. So if your metabolism is off, it affects your character's abilities?
Yes, deficiencies can impact walk and run speed, overall health and energy. It's arguably the most intricate survival game in terms of hunger and nutrition.
That's truly fascinating. These games really go above and beyond to simulate survival. Thanks for the deep dive, Tom.
My pleasure, Lily. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed our discussion, please follow or subscribe for more intriguing topics.
Yes, thank you. We look forward to having you in our next episode. Until then, happy gaming.